The Russian government wants you to believe a certain story, a narrative of a strong, growing economy that is unaffected by Western sanctions. They point to official figures showing over 4% GDP growth in 2023 and 2024, creating an image of a country that is not only surviving but thriving. However, that growth mainly comes from unprecedented military spending, which is like burning your furniture to stay warm for a night. In the next few minutes, we will reveal the truth behind the propaganda, exposing what those headline numbers conceal, and showing the real cost Russia is paying for its war. After the shock of the invasion and the first round of sanctions, Russia's GDP rebounded from contraction to high growth. This recovery was driven by massive state spending that poured trillions of rubles into the economy. But just ask one simple question: where is that money going? And the triumphant story falls apart into twisted metal and empty artillery shells. This isn't growth in areas that improve people's lives or create a sustainable future. There are no new hospitals, better schools, or consumer innovations. Instead, it's all about wartime production of tanks, missiles, shells, and uniforms. For 2025, Russia has set aside a record 13.5 trillion rubles for defense. When combined with national security, that figure rises to about 40% of the federal budget. Military and security spending now surpasses the total planned spending on education, healthcare, and social policies. As the military budget continues to grow, social spending is being cut. Education, health, and social policy are paying the price. The result is a dual economy, where the nation is divided against itself. On one side is a thriving military-industrial complex operating around the clock. On the other side is a civilian economy that is methodically deprived of capital, resources, and, most importantly, people. The war machine artificially boosts GDP, while the part of the economy that serves everyday citizens slips into recession. This is not balanced growth. It's a reliance on a single, destructive, and ultimately unproductive industry, war. Temporary boosts rarely last. Following the flurry of wartime spending that upheld the 2023 to 2024 figures, the future looks bleak. The World Bank predicts growth will fall to around 1% in 2025 to 2026. The IMF expects a meager growth rate of just above 0.5%. Even the central bank has downgraded its forecast to about 0.5 to 1%. Russia's top industrial lobby admits that just over 1% growth is low, undoubtedly. The so-called miracle is fading into stagnation. Exactly what would happen when economic growth is based on weapons instead of productive civilian investment or export capability. Moreover, the once promising sectors associated with this wartime economy are already struggling. After months of increasing output, metrics linked to military hardware, like fabricated metal products and other transport equipment, have flattened or slowed. The initial boost from restarting old Soviet-era production lines has hit a plateau. Working extra hours cannot create new machine tools, skilled machinists, or modern microchips out of thin air. If the booming sector is facing a wall, consider the rest of the economy. The Russian Academy of Sciences reports that most civilian-focused manufacturing is now in recession. Business surveys show that most companies expect a slowdown, and about three-quarters report a lack of credit to operate, let alone grow. This isn't a temporary dip, it's a systemic issue. The war is consuming the civilian economy. Steel that could construct buildings and vehicles is being used for artillery barrels. Electronics that might power medical devices are instead guiding missiles. Engineers who could design consumer technology are now working on drone engines. As civilian industries weaken, they produce fewer goods and generate less tax revenue. This forces the government to borrow more and print money to support the war, creating a cycle of vulnerability that worsens with each shock. Sanctions didn't cause an immediate collapse, but they act as a slow poison. They cut Russia off from global supply chains it relied on and blocked access to advanced Western technology, software, and spare parts. The outcome is technological regression. Non-military sectors are forced to simplify, rely on outdated methods, and make do with inferior components. Over time, this leads to a smaller, more primitive, and less productive economy that struggles to compete even in friendly markets. None of this functions without people, and Russia is running out of them where it counts. The Kremlin boasts about record-low unemployment, around 2.4%, but that's not a sign of health. It indicates a shrinking workforce. Hundreds of thousands of working-age men, many with technical skills, were drafted. Another wave, possibly over 1 million, fled the draft and the regime. By late 2024, Russia faced a record labor shortage in the millions, with nearly 2 million workers missing from manufacturing alone. This labor shortfall isn't hypothetical. It means fewer bus drivers, construction workers, pilots, mechanics, and technicians. For many industries, the lack of workers is the main obstacle to growth. Production managers can buy steel and electricity. They can't create qualified welders, machinists, and avionics engineers from nowhere. The scarcity has led to a paradox. Employers are competing for a shrinking pool of workers by offering higher pay. Some months have seen nominal average wages rise at double-digit rates. Workers in the war economy feel more financially secure. But this situation is fragile and localized. Tens of millions still live near or below the poverty line, and food charities are seeing increasing demand. High salaries in the war sector hide a broader reality where many households are struggling with inflation. Behind the scenes is the government's spending, funded by dwindling savings and rapid money printing. To finance the war, the Kremlin is spending money at an unsustainable rate. The National Wealth Fund shows about 13 trillion rubles on paper, but much of that consists of illiquid stakes in state firms and long-term projects. The liquid part, cash and readily accessible assets, has fallen to just a few trillion, mostly in yuan and gold, and is being used quickly. At the same time, oil and gas, Moscow's primary source of foreign currency, are under pressure. Sanctions and price caps require discounts and complicated workarounds with an aging fleet of tankers. To address the gap, the government is raising taxes and relying on the central bank, effectively monetizing deficits in all but name. This combination of reckless spending and severe labor shortages has triggered persistent inflation. Price increases are running well above the 4% target and are unlikely to return to it soon. To curb inflation, the Bank of Russia raised rates to very high levels before slightly reducing them to the mid-teens. However, this solution also poses a problem. At those rates, normal businesses cannot borrow to invest or even survive. Adding to the situation is the currency issue. Capital controls can slow outflows, but they cannot restore confidence. The ruble fluctuates with every headline because investors see the same calculations: shrinking liquid reserves, dwindling energy margins, rising taxes, and a government that must spend ever more to sustain the war. As trust diminishes, households rush into hard assets, increasing inflationary pressure. The social contract is breaking down. Money and resources are being diverted from schools and hospitals to produce shells and drones. Regional budgets depend on Moscow, which in turn relies on forced, voluntary contributions from state companies. Pensions fall behind. Public services decline. The things that make everyday life reliable, bus schedules, clinic hours, affordable food, become less dependable. This cost doesn't appear in quarterly GDP, but people feel it every day. Demographics are also troubling. A smaller group of young workers is stuck carrying a heavier load of dependence and debt. Immigration and war casualties are worsening a long-term decline in birth rates. Even if the war ended tomorrow, rebuilding the civilian workforce would take years, and that's assuming the talent abroad is willing to return. Consider the daily signs that don't show up in optimistic reports. Airlines are canceling routes because of a shortage of crews and spare parts. Auto dealers are selling older, less equipped models due to a lack of components. Hospitals are delaying elective procedures when equipment breaks and replacement parts are stuck in customs. City transit systems are cutting schedules because of driver shortages and fuel constraints, pushing commuters to more expensive options. Small manufacturers are pulling apprentices from training programs and assigning them to production lines just to meet quotas, sacrificing future skill development for immediate output. Could the high military spending lead to useful civilian technology? In theory, yes, but in practice, Russia's tight controls and isolation hinder the flow of ideas. Innovations that could serve two purposes need open supply chains, foreign tools, outside money, and cooperation with global standards groups. Wartime secrecy, sanctions, and capital controls push in the opposite direction. The outcome is a dead end for innovation. Clever solutions that don't scale, patched together with gray market parts that fail quality assessments. And consider what's happening to investment. With credit becoming more expensive and uncertainty rising, companies are delaying upgrades, stretching the life of old equipment beyond safe limits. Preventive maintenance gets replaced by repairing breakdowns. Productivity slips down each quarter, hidden under overtime and a rising headcount. This is how economies stagnate, not with a crash, but with a quiet decline as the capital stock wears out slowly. Foreign trade partners are noticing. Friendly buyers are demanding larger discounts to offset risks from sanctions, payment delays, and shipping issues. Insurance costs are rising. Freight rates are increasing on routes served by older ships without Western protection. Each workaround imposes a cost, reducing profits to smaller margins. All of this reflects in household behavior. Families delay significant purchases, extend the life of their appliances, and cut back on discretionary spending. They hoard imported goods when available and then switch to cheaper alternatives when supplies run low. Mortgage applications slow due to high rates. The used car market becomes a sign of anxiety. These choices, when multiplied across millions of families, limit any recovery driven by consumption. One more factor to consider: governance risks. A war economy centralizes power, blurs legal lines, and normalizes exceptional measures. Businesses begin to plan for new regulations instead of market demands. Compliance costs increase. Managers spend more time handling permits, inspections, and requests rather than enhancing products. This environment discourages entrepreneurship, the exact opposite of what a shrinking, aging economy needs to foster renewal. So take a step back and view the bigger picture. The civilian economy is weakened and declining. The workforce is dwindling and aging. The state is using up savings while quietly printing money to address the deficit. Inflation remains high, interest rates are elevated, and credit is vanishing for everyone not supporting the war. Energy revenues are less reliable. The ruble serves as a measure of anxiety, and investment outside the defense sector is collapsing. This isn't resilience, it's self-destruction. The seemingly strong GDP numbers are a mirage, statistical warmth produced by an engine that is grinding to a halt. The war machine is consuming the present and mortgaging the future of the state, its people, and its economy. Today's illusion of stability comes at the expense of decades of lost prosperity. The collapse isn't a distant possibility, it's unfolding in slow motion right now. If this analysis helped you see beyond the official headlines, please consider liking and subscribing. Your support allows us to continue producing in-depth reports like this one. Thank you for watching.